What happens when raw talent collides with deep-rooted prejudice at the edge of enemy airspace? One woman's extraordinary journey from mockery to military legend will forever transform how we understand courage under fire. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Pack your bags and find the nearest secretarial course. Colonel James Barrett's voice thundered across the flight line as he ripped the mission briefing from Lieutenant Olivia Mitchell's grip. Her coffee mug crashed to the tarmac, sending dark stains across her crisp desert camouflage uniform. The F-16 Fighting Falcon is our premier combat aircraft, not some playground for quota hires. Cruel laughter erupted from the male pilots surrounding her. Someone's phone appeared, recording every second of her public humiliation. "Maybe try flying a desk instead," another voice called out, sparking fresh waves of mockery. The colonel crumpled Olivia's combat readiness application and tossed it toward an overflowing trash bin. Research proves that certain individuals lack the spatial reasoning and mental resilience required for advanced combat aviation. That's just scientific fact. As security personnel approached to escort her from the briefing area, Olivia's fingers found the worn silver wings hidden inside her pocket. Her mother's legacy. The tarnished metal had survived countless missions over hostile territory during Desert Storm. Her eyes, rather than brimming with tears, narrowed with icy determination. A slight smile played at the corners of her mouth, unsettling the colonel. They had just humiliated the wrong pilot. Olivia Mitchell had never been one to accept defeat gracefully. At 28, she occupied a sparse apartment in Tucson, Arizona, with panoramic views of aircraft taking off from the nearby Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. Each dawn brought the ritual of watching F-16s pierce the cloud layer while she sipped her morning coffee, envisioning herself commanding those same controls. A distinguished Air Force Academy graduate with a master's degree in aerospace engineering from MIT, Olivia had descended from a celebrated military lineage spanning 3 generations. Her mother had been a pioneering pilot during Operation Desert Storm, navigating dangerous missions over Iraqi territory. Her grandfather had commanded bomber squadrons during the Vietnam War. Both had instilled in her an unshakable respect for aviation and a burning ambition to continue their legacy. Following her graduation, Olivia had accepted a position developing advanced targeting systems for next-generation fighter aircraft at Meridian Defense Systems. The compensation was exceptional. Her colleagues admired her technical expertise, but her ultimate dream remained unfulfilled: to pilot the very machines she helped engineer in actual combat scenarios. For 3 years, she had applied to the prestigious Tactical Combat Training Program at Holloman Air Force Base, the elite institution authorized to train pilots for frontline combat missions on the F-16. The program, operated by retired Air Force General Robert Westfield, maintained extensive connections with Pentagon leadership and combat commands worldwide. Their graduates secured coveted positions in forward deployment units and specialized strike teams, positions Olivia knew she deserved as much as any pilot. Each rejection letter felt like a dagger to her aspirations, but Olivia never revealed her disappointment. Instead, she saved every dollar from her engineering salary to afford additional flight training hours on civilian aircraft. Weekends weren't reserved for socializing or dating. They were dedicated to small airfields throughout Arizona, accumulating over 700 flight hours across various aircraft types to strengthen her credentials. After facing rejection twice with applications prominently displaying her full name, she finally secured an interview by submitting her paperwork with only her initials, O. Mitchell. This allowed her exceptional qualifications to speak without preconceptions, what the training program administrators didn't realize. What nobody except her former squadron commander knew was that during her initial service, Olivia had worked directly on the F-16's advanced targeting and weapon systems. She understood the aircraft more intimately than most instructors who would attempt to teach her. Her mother's wings, presented to her during a final hospital visit, with trembling hands pressing them into her palm, came with a whispered promise. "You'll strike harder and fly farther than any of us ever dreamed, little bird." Those weathered metal wings weren't merely a family heirloom. They represented her sacred vow to shatter the barriers that had constrained pioneering female combat pilots before her. She kept them in her pocket during every flight, touching them for courage before each mission. That morning, as Olivia had walked confidently through the Tactical Combat Training Program's entrance, she believed her credentials would finally eliminate all doubt. Instead, she found herself standing in the parking lot, coffee staining her uniform, security guards flanking her, and the echo of masculine laughter ringing in her ears. But Olivia Mitchell wasn't retreating. Not today. Not ever. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do to someone is underestimate their determination. Captain Lucas Rodriguez, Olivia's former Air Force Academy classmate, pretended not to recognize her when she returned to the training facility the following morning with proper documentation proving her acceptance couldn't be legally revoked. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Mitchell, I thought you were applying for the flight simulator technician position," he announced loudly as she entered the briefing room, drawing snickers from other instructors. Lucas had washed out of advanced combat training years earlier, settling for a ground instructor role instead. His failure had apparently fermented into bitterness toward anyone he deemed unworthy of achieving what he couldn't, especially a determined woman. Later that week at the Afterburner, the local establishment where pilots gathered to exchange stories and build camaraderie, Lucas introduced Olivia to his circle with a smirk. "This is Mitchell. She actually believes she's going to fly combat missions in an F-16. The group erupted in laughter, beer foam spilling over glass edges. "Sweetheart, the only thing you'll be flying is a desk when you fail," said one man, his flight jacket decorated with patches Olivia knew he hadn't legitimately earned. She sipped her water silently, memorizing each face. One day, these same individuals would watch her soar past them, both literally and figuratively. Even in her apartment complex, there was no escape from constant skepticism. Her neighbor, Captain Michael Donovan, an experienced combat pilot with multiple tours in Afghanistan, consistently undermined her confidence during elevator encounters and mailbox conversations. "You realize the combat simulator costs more than you'll earn in a decade, right? They'll never risk letting you near it," he said while sorting through his mail. "The program doesn't want to damage equipment that expensive." When Olivia mentioned her previous experience designing similar systems, Michael countered with a condescending smile. "Designing systems and operating them under enemy fire require completely different skill sets. That's why certain people become combat pilots, while others become support staff. It's about natural capabilities. No disrespect intended, of course." His words were always wrapped in a thin veneer of neighborly concern, as if he were performing a community service by managing her expectations. The prejudice extended beyond military circles. At the local grocery store, Olivia wore her training program jacket with pride. It had cost a significant sum and represented her hard-won place in the program. A young girl, perhaps 9 or 10 years old, pointed excitedly. "Look, Mom, she's a fighter pilot." The mother quickly grabbed her daughter's hand and pulled her away with a disapproving glance at Olivia. "That's not realistic for girls like us, honey. Let's go find something more practical to dream about." The woman's words stung more deeply than the outright mockery from her male colleagues. This was how the cycle perpetuated itself, dreams extinguished before they could take flight. In the arena of dreams, some battles are fought in cockpits, others in briefing rooms, and the most important ones in your own mind. The first week of combat training established the tone for Olivia's ordeal. She arrived early Monday morning to discover her assigned locker vandalized with makeup products and cleaning supplies. A mop, a feather duster, and a bottle of nail polish arranged precisely where her flight gear should have been. While other trainees received comprehensive mission packages, Olivia's materials contained outdated tactical manuals with crucial pages mysteriously missing. When she reported this to the administrative office, the secretary offered a sympathetic but helpless expression. "Maybe check the women's locker room. I heard some of the guys thought it would be amusing to hide them there." Jack Harrington, a former Navy pilot with half of Olivia's flight experience and none of her engineering expertise, was immediately designated team leader for their 5-person tactical unit, while Olivia was relegated to communications duties. "Nothing personal, Mitchell," said Instructor Major William Tanner with a thin smile. "Harrington possesses the natural leadership qualities combat missions demand." Jack's leadership primarily consisted of talking over Olivia whenever she offered tactical insights, and assigning her the administrative tasks nobody else wanted. When simulator training commenced in the second week, the disparity became even more apparent. Instructor Tanner deliberately configured Olivia's simulator to maximum difficulty. Severe weather conditions, multiple system malfunctions, and unpredictable enemy engagements, while providing the men with standard settings. The other trainees watched, expecting her to fail spectacularly. Instead, Olivia's engineering background enabled her to diagnose each system failure and navigate the challenges with methodical precision. When she completed the exercise with a higher score than most of her male counterparts despite the additional obstacles, Tanner announced to the class, "Mitchell got lucky. The computer must have malfunctioned. We'll rerun her assessment tomorrow." During emergency procedures training, when trainees were supposed to pair up for cockpit crisis protocols, male colleagues physically distanced themselves from Olivia. "If I passed out during a real mission, I'd rather take my chances alone than have her try to save me," joked Ryan Wells, a stocky ex-Navy pilot from Texas. "Her hands are probably too small to reach the emergency controls anyway." Instructor Captain Reed merely shrugged when Olivia pointed out she couldn't complete the partner exercises alone. "Form teams however you prefer. This isn't elementary school. I'm not assigning partners." She ended up practicing with a maintenance dummy, while other trainees called it her perfect boyfriend, silent and motionless. When systematic harassment fails to break someone, institutions often resort to more creative forms of sabotage. By the third week, the hostility had escalated from juvenile pranks to deliberate sabotage. General Westfield himself summoned Olivia into his wood-paneled office, overlooking the airfield. Behind him, framed photographs displayed him alongside military leaders and aviation pioneers. "All men. You're disrupting the cohesion of this class," he said coldly, not offering her a seat while remaining standing behind his imposing desk. "Your presence is distracting my most promising students. Perhaps you should consider transferring to our drone pilot program. It's less demanding, more suitable for someone with your—" He paused, eyes flicking dismissively over her frame, Constitution. When Olivia achieved a perfect score on the tactical operations examination, 100% when the class average was 75%, instructor Captain Reed accused her of academic dishonesty in front of the entire class. Nobody scores this high on their first attempt, especially not. He stopped himself, but his meaning was unmistakable. Without evidence or investigation, her perfect score was reduced to a 75%. When she protested, citing specific questions and her detailed answers, Reed cut her off. "Consider yourself fortunate you're not being expelled, Mitchell. Accept the passing grade and move forward." During the mid-program evaluation where trainees faced a panel of instructors reviewing their progress, Olivia alone confronted questioning about her physical and psychological fitness. "The F-16 generates G-forces that certain body types weren't designed to endure," said Dr. Harrison, the program's consulting physician who hadn't bothered reviewing her spotless medical records. "Are you prepared for the physical toll this will take on your reproductive system? Many individuals find that extreme G-forces cause hormonal irregularities and potential fertility complications." No male trainee faced similar questioning about their bodily functions or future family plans. Olivia maintained her composure, answering each inappropriate question with clinical precision, refusing to provide the emotional reaction they seemed to be provoking. The harassment extended beyond training walls into the public sphere. Combat Aviation Today, a popular blog among military professionals, published an article titled "Social Engineering Reaches the Cockpit, Standards Compromised at Elite Training Program." Though not naming her directly, the article featured a blurred image of Olivia in the background and quoted anonymous sources claiming that traditional combat readiness standards are being sacrificed for political correctness. The comment section filled with vitriol, many commenters calling for a return to the days when pilots were pilots. Worse was the video that began circulating on military forums during a particularly challenging simulator session where instructor Olivia had struggled momentarily before regaining control of the virtual aircraft. Someone had recorded only her moments of difficulty, editing out her successful recovery and the identical struggles of male trainees facing the same scenario. The viral video titled "This is Why Women Shouldn't Fly Combat" accumulated thousands of comments, most echoing the sentiment. "Would you trust her to provide your air support when bullets are flying?" Olivia's father called in tears after seeing it, asking if perhaps she should consider another military specialty. "I just hate seeing you suffer, sweetheart," he said, voicing the doubt Olivia refused to acknowledge in herself. The most insidious form of discrimination comes wrapped in policies and procedures, making it almost impossible to challenge. The Combat Aviation Leadership Association, a powerful network of military aviation leaders, released a statement expressing concerns about maintaining the rigorous standards that have made our program the nation's premier combat training facility. Several high-profile graduates, now commanders of elite squadrons and flight wings, threatened to withdraw support if politically motivated admission policies continued to undermine the program's legacy of excellence. Though not explicitly targeting Olivia, everyone knew she was the only The message was clear. Her presence was jeopardizing the program's standing and future. By the 8th week of the 12-week program, the institutional barriers became even more blatant. The Air Force Safety Office sent a special evaluator to observe Olivia's progress after receiving an anonymous complaint about safety concerns. No other trainee received this extraordinary scrutiny. The evaluator, a former combat pilot in his 60s, took excessive notes whenever Olivia made the slightest error, his pen scratching loudly against his clipboard as if recording evidence for a future investigation. The program's administrative office suddenly discovered an issue with Olivia's training certification, claiming a processing error had left her flight hours documentation incomplete. They threatened to suspend her training unless she could provide additional verification within 48 hours, a problem never experienced by other trainees and conveniently timed just before the crucial Phase 2 evaluations. Olivia was forced to contact her previous flight instructors across the state, adding logistical stress to the psychological burden she already carried. Most egregiously, the training board of directors voted to implement new physical fitness standards midway through the program, standards that specifically targeted physical differences between men and women. The new requirements included minimum grip strength and reach measurements that many women, including Olivia, barely met. Upper body strength tests were added that had little relevance to actual flying skills. Combat readiness is our primary concern, General Westfield announced when implementing the changes. These standards ensure all our graduates can handle the physical demands of advanced combat missions. The fact that Olivia had already demonstrated she could handle these demands in the simulator was conveniently ignored. Through it all, Olivia persevered. She studied longer, trained harder, and maintained a professional demeanor that gave her tormentors no additional ammunition. Late at night, alone in her apartment, she would sometimes touch her mother's wings and whisper, "I won't let them win." Not after coming this far. The metal was smooth from decades of handling, first by her mother in combat, then by Olivia's fingers seeking connection to her family's legacy of courage. Some mornings, exhausted from studying until dawn, she questioned whether the constant battle was worth it. On those days, she'd force herself to watch the F-16s taking off from Davis-Monthan, their afterburners, igniting with a promise of freedom that renewed her determination. Sometimes the most important battles are won not through confrontation, but through the courage to do what's right when nobody is watching. The final examination approached a live combat exercise in the actual F-16 Fighting Falcon. Only the top 3 trainees would receive this opportunity, with the best performer earning a coveted position with an elite forward-deployed strike squadron. Despite her superior academic performance after the cheating accusation was reluctantly dropped, Olivia was ranked 4th, just missing the cutoff. Jack Harrington, Ryan Wells, and Lucas's protege Brandon Miller would be the only ones to touch the controls of the advanced aircraft they'd spent 3 months studying. Olivia's dreams seemed to be slipping away despite having scored higher than Brandon on every written assessment and simulator challenge. The night before the test flights, Olivia was working late in the simulator room, trying to understand what she could have done differently. The training facility was nearly empty, most students and staff having gone home or out to celebrate the end of the program. Through the partially open door of the adjacent briefing room, she overheard General Westfield and Captain Reed having an intense conversation about the F-16's critical targeting system flaw, the exact issue she had identified and helped solve during her engineering days. "The manufacturer says it's within acceptable parameters, but I'm not convinced," Westfield said, his voice unusually concerned. "If they engage the enhanced targeting system while executing high-speed evasive maneuvers, the weapon system could lock onto friendly assets." "Should we cancel the exercise?" asked Reed. No. The test scenario doesn't require those specific conditions," Westfield replied. "As long as they stick to the flight plan, there's no risk. Nobody knows about this except us and the engineers. The test pilots just need to avoid using enhanced targeting during evasive maneuvers." Olivia froze, remembering Jack Harrington's boast earlier that day. Tomorrow I'm going to show everyone what this bird can really do. I've got a few surprises planned that'll make the safety officers sweat. He had specifically mentioned demonstrating the enhanced targeting system's capabilities during complex evasive maneuvers as part of his planned demonstration. Jack was walking into danger, unaware of the aircraft's potentially fatal flaw. She pushed open the door, startling both men. "You can't send them up without warning them about the targeting system integration issue," she said firmly. Westfield's face darkened. "You were eavesdropping, Mitchell. That's grounds for immediate dismissal." "I wasn't eavesdropping. I was in the simulator room, and you were speaking loudly about a safety issue that could kill one of your students." Olivia stood her ground. "I helped design the F-16's advanced targeting systems when I was working at Meridian. The targeting system isn't the primary problem. It's the integration with the evasive maneuver protocols. I developed a fix 2 years ago, but it was shelved because it came from a junior engineer." She paused, meeting Westfield's eyes directly. "The female one." General Westfield's expression shifted from anger to confusion. "You're that, Mitchell? The engineer who proposed the adaptive targeting algorithm?" "The very same," Olivia confirmed, pulling out her old credentials with her full security clearance information. "Your top 3 trainees will be flying tomorrow without that fix." Jack Harrington has been struggling with coordinating targeting and evasion in the simulator, and he's planning to attempt exactly the kind of maneuver that could trigger the defect. "Will you risk his life to protect your pride?" Westfield and Reed exchanged alarmed glances. Jack Harrington was the son of a senior Pentagon official who sat on the Military Appropriations Committee, a connection the program had cultivated carefully. "If anything happened to him, your test pilots could die tomorrow unless you let me fly," Olivia stated firmly. "I know the F-16 systems better than anyone here. I can demonstrate the problem and the solution in a controlled way. Or you can hope Jack doesn't get ambitious and try to show off for the commanders who will be watching." After an intense debate behind closed doors, Westfield reluctantly agreed to let Olivia fly, not as a trainee, but as a technical safety consultant. "You'll go up last after the others have completed their runs," he said grudgingly. "But you won't be part of the competition. This is purely a safety measure." Olivia knew this was her only chance, and she accepted his terms without argument. That night, she didn't sleep. Instead, she reviewed every technical document on the F-16 she could access, refreshing her memory on the precise conditions that triggered the targeting issue and the exact control inputs needed to counteract it. By dawn, she was exhausted but prepared, both for her flight and for the possibility of having to save one of her tormentors from disaster. True character isn't revealed in moments of triumph, but in the split seconds when someone else's life hangs in the balance. What happens when raw talent collides with deep-rooted prejudice at the edge of enemy airspace? One woman's extraordinary journey from mockery to military legend will forever transform how we understand courage under fire. The test date dawned with crystal-clear visibility and calm winds, perfect flying conditions. High-ranking officials from Air Force Combat Command arrived in sleek military transports, along with several Pentagon observers and defense industry representatives. The energy was electric as the gleaming F-16 Fighting Falcon was rolled onto the tarmac, its cutting-edge design drawing appreciative murmurs from the crowd. Olivia stood apart, ignored by her classmates who were congratulating the 3 selected pilots. She noticed General Westfield speaking urgently with Jack Harrington, likely warning him about the targeting system issue without mentioning her involvement. Jack's usual confidence seemed slightly diminished as he nodded seriously at whatever instructions Westfield was giving him. Ryan Wells went first, performing a solid but conservative flight that demonstrated basic handling capabilities without pushing any boundaries. He landed to polite applause, having completed the designated test route without incident. Brandon Miller followed with a slightly more adventurous performance, attempting one advanced maneuver that he executed adequately if not elegantly. The evaluators nodded with approval, making notes on their tablets as Brandon taxied back to the staging area. When Jack's turn came, his arrogance reasserted itself the moment he climbed into the cockpit. With a theatrical salute to the crowd, he began with unauthorized low-altitude passes over the airfield, drawing gasps from spectators and scowls from the safety officers who recognized the unnecessary risk. As his confidence grew, he radioed his intention to demonstrate the F-16's full combat capabilities, deviating from the approved flight plan to perform increasingly complex maneuvers. Olivia watched the telemetry on the ground control monitors, her stomach tightening as Jack initiated a series of high-G turns that would stress both pilot and aircraft. "He's setting up for the targeting demonstration," she warned Westfield, who was now looking distinctly uncomfortable. Sure enough, Jack's voice came through the radio. "Control, initiating enhanced targeting sequence while executing evasive pattern delta." Exactly what Westfield had warned him not to do. On the live video feed from the chase plane, everyone could see the moment the F-16 began to behave erratically. Its normally smooth flight path suddenly jerked as the targeting system and flight controls fought each other. Warning lights flashed across the cockpit displays as the weapon system began cycling through potential targets, including the chase plane itself. The aircraft began to spin uncontrollably, Jack's panic-stricken voice crackling over the radio. "Control! Targeting systems locked onto friendly? Can't override! Systems failure! Help!" Without waiting for authorization, Olivia grabbed the radio. "Jack, this is Mitchell. Switch to manual targeting override. Authorization code Victor 6 Tango 9er. Reduce thrust to 60%. Execute countermeasure sequence 3 times, not once." There was a moment of terrible silence. Then Jack's strained voice. "Manual override engaged. Thrust at 60%. Executing countermeasures." Gradually, agonizingly, the F-16 stabilized, though it was still far from normal flight parameters. Following Olivia's calm, precise instructions, Jack managed to regain enough control to attempt a landing. His approach was erratic, but he touched down safely, the aircraft's systems damaged but its pilot unharmed. As emergency vehicles surrounded the jet, the crowd stood in stunned silence, the near disaster having unfolded before their eyes. General Westfield turned to Olivia, his face ashen. "Get in the backup aircraft. Show us what should have happened up there." Sometimes the most powerful statement isn't made with words, but with the poetry of perfect execution under impossible pressure. As Olivia climbed into the cockpit of the second F-16, a strange calm settled over her. This was where she belonged, not fighting for acceptance but flying the machine she knew intimately. The complicated instrument panel that intimidated most pilots felt like home to her, each switch and display an old friend from her engineering days. She ran through the pre-flight checklist with practiced efficiency, then radioed for takeoff clearance. "Falcon 2, you are cleared for takeoff," came the controller's voice. "Standard test route only, Mitchell. No deviations." "Understood, Control," Olivia replied, knowing she would be doing far more than the standard route. As the powerful engines roared to life, she felt her mother's wings pressing against her chest through her flight suit, a talisman of both her past and her future. Unlike her male counterparts, Olivia took the F-16 through its basic paces first, demonstrating perfect control and handling at lower altitudes. She wanted everyone watching to see her mastery of fundamentals before she attempted anything more ambitious. The aircraft responded to her touch like a dance partner, each movement precisely calibrated. The radio remained silent as observers on the ground watched her flawless execution. Then, climbing steadily, Olivia announced, "Control, I'm going to demonstrate the targeting integration issue and its correction." Before Westfield could object, she had already initiated the exact sequence that had nearly doomed Jack Harrington. "Mitchell, return to base immediately." Westfield's voice crackled with alarm. "Sir, with respect, the commanders and engineers need to see this. I can handle it." Without waiting for a response, Olivia deliberately triggered the exact conditions that would expose the flaw. The F-16 began to show the same instability Jack had experienced, but instead of panicking, Olivia executed the precise sequence of corrections she had developed years ago as an engineer. The jet's erratic movement smoothed out almost immediately. Instead of fighting the aircraft systems, Olivia worked with them, demonstrating both the flaw and its solution simultaneously. She put the F-16 through maneuvers no one had attempted during a test flight, proving not just that the flaw could be managed, but that her fix allowed the jet to perform beyond its current specifications. For 15 breathtaking minutes, Olivia Mitchell wrote a new chapter in combat aviation history. The crowd below watched in awe as she demonstrated mastery of an aircraft that had nearly killed its previous pilot. When she finally brought the F-16 in for landing, her touchdown was so smooth that observers later swore the plane seemed to hover before gently kissing the runway. She climbed down from the cockpit to complete silence. Then the Air Force Weapons Systems Director stepped forward, his face showing a mixture of astonishment and professional respect. "That was the most impressive handling of the F-16 I've ever seen," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "How did you know about the targeting integration issue? We've had our best people working on that for months." Before Olivia could answer, another officer approached, the Air Force's Director of Combat Systems Development. "More importantly, how did you solve it mid-flight?" "Our test pilots have been struggling with that exact problem for over a year." Olivia stood straight, her voice clear and confident. "I'm the Mitchell who proposed the adaptive targeting algorithm 2 years ago while working at Meridian Defense. The solution has been in your files all along, apparently gathering dust because of whose name was on it. The most profound victories aren't those that defeat enemies, but those that transform them into allies." The revelation of Olivia's engineering background and her perfect flight created an immediate shockwave through the assembled military community. The Pentagon officials huddled together, speaking in urgent whispers while occasionally glancing her way. Meanwhile, Jack Harrington was being checked by medics, his face pale and his customary arrogance replaced by the humbled look of a man who had glimpsed his own mortality. General Westfield was cornered by senior officers, who had witnessed the entire incident. Sweating under the pressure of multiple questions thrust toward him, he was forced to make a public statement acknowledging the discrimination Olivia had faced. "Today's events have revealed significant oversights in our evaluation system," he admitted stiffly. "Lieutenant Mitchell's performance today wasn't just the best in this class. It was the best in the program's history. We will be conducting a thorough review of our admission and evaluation criteria moving forward." The Air Force Public Affairs team scrambled to control the narrative, but the story was already spreading through military channels. Combat aviation forums filled with technical discussions about Olivia's innovative handling techniques, with professional pilots requesting video footage to study her methods. Female service members across the country shared clips of her flight with hashtags like #WingsHavenAgender and #FlyLikeAGirl, turning Olivia into an overnight symbol of perseverance against institutional bias. Major Tanner, who had been her harshest critic throughout the program, approached her as the crowd began to disperse. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by an awkward discomfort. "I was wrong about you, Mitchell," he said, avoiding direct eye contact. "But more importantly, I was wrong about female combat pilots generally. My daughter wants to fly, and I've been discouraging her. I won't make that mistake anymore." Olivia nodded, accepting his apology without offering easy absolution. "It's not just about being wrong, Major. It's about the damage done along the way. How many women has this program turned away who might have been excellent combat pilots? How many dreams were crushed before they could take flight?" Tanner had no answer, but his chastened expression suggested her words had landed. Jack Harrington, released by the medics with a clean bill of health despite his ordeal, approached Olivia with unexpected humility. His usual swagger was gone, replaced by genuine gratitude that surprised everyone who knew him. "You saved my life up there," he said simply. "I would have died if you hadn't talked me through that recovery. I don't know how to thank you properly." "You can thank me by remembering this moment the next time you're tempted to judge someone by their gender rather than their abilities," Olivia replied. "And by flying with more respect for the aircraft. They're not toys for showing off. They're complex machines that deserve your full attention and respect." Later, during the hastily reorganized graduation ceremony, Jack publicly thanked Olivia in front of fellow students, instructors, and military representatives. "I wouldn't be standing here today if not for Lieutenant Mitchell," he admitted, his voice cracking slightly. "She saved my life despite everything I said and did. That's the kind of pilot, the kind of person I aspire to be. True leaders don't just break through barriers. They ensure those barriers can never be rebuilt." 3 months later, Olivia found herself in a position she could hardly have imagined during those dark days at the training program. The Air Force, recognizing both her engineering genius and her exceptional flying skills, had created a unique dual role for her: combat pilot, and technical advisor to the newly formed Integrated Systems Combat Group. Her first assignment wasn't what anyone expected. Rather than being sent to an established combat zone, Olivia was deployed to a newly emerging conflict in Eastern Europe, where Russian-backed separatists had begun using advanced anti-aircraft systems to threaten NATO operations. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. 3 Allied aircraft had already been lost to these sophisticated surface-to-air missile systems that seemed to anticipate standard evasive maneuvers. Intelligence suggested the enemy had obtained classified NATO tactical manuals. The commanding officer, Colonel David Marshall, had assembled an elite team of combat pilots to develop a counter-strategy, but progress was slow. The simulation runs all ended with the same result: aircraft lost, pilots theoretically killed. When Olivia arrived at the forward airbase in Poland, the reception was predictably cool. The combat pilots, all men with multiple tours of duty, viewed her with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. "Welcome to the real world, Lieutenant," Colonel Marshall said during her initial briefing. "I've heard about your technical prowess, but theory and combat are different animals entirely." Olivia stood her ground. "With respect, sir, I believe I can help solve your SAM problem." The colonel raised an eyebrow. "We've had our best tactical minds working on this for weeks. What makes you think you can succeed where they've failed?" "Because they're thinking like pilots, sir. I think like both a pilot and an engineer. If these systems are using our own tactical manuals against us, we need to create maneuvers no manual has ever documented." Marshall studied her for a long moment. "You have 48 hours to show me something promising. After that, we proceed with Operation Breakwater as planned." Olivia worked through the night, analyzing radar data from the downed aircraft and studying the separatists' missile launch patterns. By dawn, she had identified a critical flaw in the enemy's targeting algorithms. They were designed to predict standard NATO evasive actions, but would fail against unconventional maneuvers executed at precise moments in the missile's tracking cycle. The next morning, she presented her findings to a room full of skeptical pilots. "The key isn't outrunning the missile," she explained, pointing to her diagrams. "It's confusing its prediction algorithm by executing a maneuver it doesn't expect at exactly the right moment in its targeting cycle." Captain Thomas Reed, the squadron's most experienced pilot, scoffed. "That's a nice theory, Lieutenant, but these aren't simulator runs. Real missiles don't care about your algorithms." "Then let me prove it," Olivia challenged. "One flight. Real conditions." Colonel Marshall surprised everyone by agreeing. "Tomorrow morning, you'll lead a 2-ship formation into contested airspace. Reed will be your wingman." As she left the briefing room, Reed caught up with her. "Listen, Mitchell, I don't know what kind of point you're trying to prove, but this isn't some training exercise where you can show up the boys. This is combat. People die." Olivia met his gaze steadily. "I'm not trying to prove anything except that I can keep you alive up there. That's the only point that matters." That night, in the quiet of her temporary quarters, Olivia took out her mother's wings and held them tightly. "Tomorrow's for you, Mom," she whispered. "And for every woman they said couldn't fight." Dawn broke cold and clear over the Polish airfield. The 2 F-16s, Saturday fueled and armed, their sleek forms silhouetted against the rising sun. Ground crews performed final checks as Olivia and Reed conducted their pre-flight briefing. "Remember," Olivia emphasized, "standard evasive maneuvers until my mark, then execute the pattern exactly as I demonstrated. Timing is everything." Reed nodded, his expression serious. Whatever his personal feelings, he was professional enough to follow the mission plan. As they walked toward their aircraft, Colonel Marshall approached. "Lieutenant Mitchell, this reconnaissance mission is authorized to collect data only. Do not engage enemy forces unless directly threatened." "Understood, sir." Climbing into her cockpit, Olivia felt a calm certainty settle over her. This was what she had trained for, what she had fought for, not just to fly, but to make a difference when it mattered most. The engines roared to life, and moments later, the 2 F-16s were airborne, banking eastward toward the contested border region. For 30 minutes, they flew in formation, sensors gathering intelligence on separatist positions. Then Olivia's threat warning system blared. "SAM launch, bearing 095, she called over the radio. 2 missiles, tracking both aircraft. "Executing standard evasive," Reed responded, his F-16 already banking hard right while deploying countermeasures. Olivia watched her tactical display, counting down the seconds. Stand by! Stand by! Now! Execute pattern, Sierra! Both F-16s abruptly changed their evasive patterns, performing the unconventional maneuver Olivia had designed. Instead of continuing their predictable paths, they executed a complex series of altitude and direction changes at precisely calculated moments. On Olivia's display, she could see the missile's tracking system struggling to adjust. One missile veered wildly off course, detonating harmlessly in the distance. The second continued to track Reed's aircraft. Second missile still on you, Captain. Repeat Sierra 3 in 3, 2, 1, now! Reed executed the maneuver again with perfect precision. The second missile lost tracking, sailing past his aircraft before self-destructing. Missiles defeated, Olivia announced calmly. Continuing mission. Reed's voice came through, a new respect evident in his tone. That was impressive, Mitchell. Never seen anything like it. They completed their reconnaissance sweep without further incident, gathering crucial intelligence on the Separatist positions and capabilities. When they landed back at base, Colonel Marshall was waiting on the tarmac, his face showing both relief and admiration. Your tactic worked, Lieutenant. Both aircraft returned without a scratch. That's more than I can say for the last 3 missions. Word spread quickly through the base. By evening, pilots were seeking Olivia out, asking her to explain her unconventional approach to missile evasion. The same men who had viewed her with skepticism that morning now listened intently as she diagrammed her maneuvers. 3 days later, intelligence reported a major separatist advance threatening a key NATO supply route. A strike mission was authorized to destroy the enemy's forward command post, a heavily defended complex protected by the same missile systems that had proven so deadly. Colonel Marshall called Olivia to his office. I'm assigning you as tactical lead for tomorrow's strike package. 6 aircraft, high-value target. Based on your performance and the effectiveness of your countermeasures, you're the best qualified. Olivia understood the significance of this assignment. No woman had ever led a combat strike mission of this magnitude in the history of the Air Force. Thank you for your confidence, sir. I won't let you down. Marshall held her gaze. This isn't about confidence, Mitchell. It's about capability. You've earned this assignment through merit, not because I'm trying to make some political statement. That night, as Olivia prepared her mission briefing, she thought about the long journey that had brought her to this moment, from the humiliation on the training field to leading a critical combat mission. Every barrier, every insult, every act of sabotage had only strengthened her resolve and sharpened her skills. The greatest test of character isn't how you handle success, but how you transform adversity into strength. Dawn broke over the Polish airbase with a blood-red sky. The kind old pilots whispered about, red sky in morning, pilots take warning. Olivia studied the ominous horizon as she walked toward the briefing room, her mission plans tucked under her arm. Today would define not just her career, but potentially the course of this emerging conflict. The briefing room fell silent as she entered. 6 pilots, all combat veterans with thousands of flight hours, waited for her direction. Among them sat Captain Reed, Jack Harrington, who had specifically requested transfer to her unit after the training incident, and 4 other elite pilots handpicked for this mission. Gentlemen, Olivia began, her voice steady and authoritative. Operation Swift Justice is a precision strike against the Separatist command center controlling the eastern advance. Intelligence confirms at least 6 high-value targets will be present during our window of opportunity. She activated the tactical display showing satellite imagery of the target complex nestled between civilian structures. This won't be simple. The target is heavily defended with the same advanced SAM systems we've encountered, plus radar-guided anti-aircraft artillery. Civilian structures surround the target on 3 sides. Collateral damage is not acceptable. One of the pilots, Major Paul Wilson, spoke up. With respect, Lieutenant, that's an impossible equation. We can't hit that target without risking civilian casualties, especially with their air defenses. Olivia nodded, acknowledging his concern. That's why we're not using the standard approach. She switched the display to show a complex flight path that made several pilots raise their eyebrows. We'll approach from the north, using the mountain ridge to mask our radar signature. At waypoint Alpha, we'll drop to nap of Earth flying less than 100 feet above ground. Their radar systems are calibrated for conventional attack profiles. They won't expect 6 F-16s hugging the terrain. Jack leaned forward, studying the route. Those valleys are narrow. Formation flying at that altitude with full weapons load is challenging, Olivia finished for him. That's why we're spending 2 hours in the simulator after this briefing. Every pilot will run this exact route 5 times before we take off. She continued detailing the mission, the precise timing of their strike, the specialized weapons load configured for minimal blast radius but maximum structural penetration, and, most importantly, her innovative defensive countermeasures should they be detected. Colonel Marshall stood at the back of the room, arms crossed, listening intently. When Olivia finished her presentation, he stepped forward. "This is the most unorthodox strike plan I've seen in 20 years of combat operations," he said, his expression unreadable. Then a small smile formed. "And the most brilliant. Lieutenant Mitchell has identified the one approach their defenses aren't prepared for. If executed precisely, this mission could neutralize the enemy command structure with minimal risk to civilians or our personnel." He surveyed the room. Any pilot uncomfortable with Lieutenant Mitchell's plan can withdraw without prejudice. This is a volunteer mission. Not a single pilot moved. Even Major Wilson, the most skeptical, gave Olivia a respectful nod. "Very well," Marshall concluded. "Operation Swift Justice launches at 0600 hours tomorrow. Lieutenant Mitchell commands. I expect every order she gives to be followed without question." The simulator sessions proved Olivia's route was indeed challenging but executable. By the 5th run-through, all 6 pilots were navigating the treacherous terrain with growing confidence. As they exited the simulator, the mood had shifted from skepticism to determined focus. That evening, Olivia sat alone in the officers' mess, reviewing contingency plans. Captain Reed approached, setting down a cup of coffee before her. "Mind if I join you?" She gestured to the empty chair. Reed sat, his weathered face serious. "I owe you an apology, Mitchell. When you arrived, I thought this was some publicity stunt. The brass showing off their progressive policies while real combat pilots did the actual fighting." He stared into his coffee. "I was wrong. Your plan tomorrow. It's unlike anything I've seen before. Creative, calculated risk that minimizes casualties on both sides." Olivia studied him for a moment. "Thank you, Captain, but I don't need validation." "No, you don't," Reed agreed. "But I need to give it anyway. For my own conscience." He hesitated. "My sister wanted to be a pilot. 10 years ago, she scored higher than I did on every aptitude test. They still rejected her application to flight school." Olivia's expression softened. "Where is she now?" "Air Force Intelligence. She's brilliant at it, but every time she sees an F-16 overhead, I catch that look in her eye." He met Olivia's gaze directly. "Tomorrow isn't just about stopping the separatists. It's about proving something much more important." "This mission isn't about proving anything," Olivia replied firmly. "It's about completing our objective and bringing everyone home safely." Reed smiled slightly. "And that, Lieutenant, is exactly why you should be leading it." At 0500 the next morning, Olivia stood on the tarmac, conducting her pre-flight check with methodical precision. The crisp air carried the scent of jet fuel and the metallic tang of loaded munitions. Down the line, 5 other pilots performed the same ritual, preparing their aircraft for the dangerous mission ahead. Colonel Marshall approached as she completed her inspection. Weather report just came in. Fog in the northern valleys. Intelligence says the separatists are using the cover to move additional forces toward the border. The Joint Chiefs are considering scrubbing the mission. Olivia processed this information quickly. "The fog actually works in our favor, sir. Their radar effectiveness will be further degraded, and it provides additional concealment for our approach. It also makes your nap of Earth flying significantly more dangerous," Marshall pointed out. "We've trained for this," Olivia replied confidently. "My pilots can handle it." Marshall studied her for a long moment. "Your call, Lieutenant. This is your mission." "The mission proceeds as planned," she said without hesitation. He nodded once. "Good hunting." As the 6 F-16s taxied toward the runway, Olivia performed her final mental preparations. She touched her mother's wings, now permanently affixed inside her flight suit, and took a deep breath. "Strike! Lead to all aircraft," she called over the radio. "Comms check." One by one, her pilots reported in, their voices steady and determined. "Strike package, you are cleared for takeoff," the control tower announced. "Godspeed." Olivia advanced her throttle, feeling the powerful surge of the F-16's engine. The fighter accelerated down the runway and lifted gracefully into the dawn sky, 5 others following in precise formation. As they crossed into contested airspace, Olivia gave the command to descend. The formation dropped altitude rapidly, leveling off just 100 feet above the rugged terrain. Flying this low was both an art and a science. The radar advantage was significant, but the margin for error was measured in seconds. Strike lead to package. Maintain current altitude. Follow my exact route. Her voice was calm despite the mountain ridges rushing past her canopy at nearly 600 miles per hour. The fog Marshall had mentioned shrouded the valleys, creating an ethereal landscape of peaks jutting through a white sea of cloud. Olivia relied on her instruments and the terrain-following radar to navigate the treacherous path she had plotted. "Approaching waypoint Bravo," she announced. "Prepare for the canyon approach." The formation banked sharply, dropping into a narrow gorge that would shield them from enemy radar for the critical final approach. Flying through the canyon required intense concentration. Sheer rock walls blurred past on both sides, leaving just enough room for the aircraft to navigate single file. "Tighten it up," Olivia commanded as one pilot drifted slightly off course. "This canyon narrows ahead." For 3 tense minutes, the strike package threaded through the natural fortress of stone. Then suddenly, they emerged into clear air, the target complex visible in the distance. "Strike, lead to package. Target acquired. Weapons hot. Execute attack plan Delta." The formation split with choreographed precision, each aircraft moving to its designated attack position. Olivia led 2 fighters toward the primary command building, while the others targeted communications arrays and defensive positions. Just as they began their final approach, her threat warning system blared. "SAM launch! 2 missiles, bearing 030. Execute countermeasures Sierra 3 on my mark," she ordered calmly. 3, 2, 1, mark! The fighters performed the defensive maneuver Olivia had designed. As predicted, the missiles lost tracking and detonated harmlessly. "Continue approach. Stand by for weapons release." The command center grew larger in her targeting display. Olivia waited for the perfect moment, ensuring her precision-guided munitions would hit exactly as planned, minimizing any potential for civilian casualties in the nearby structures. Strike lead. Fox 3. She released her weapons, watching as they streaked toward the target with unerring accuracy. Around her, the other fighters did the same, their ordnance finding marks with surgical precision. The command center erupted in a series of controlled explosions, the specialized munitions destroying key structural points rather than creating massive blast damage. Secondary explosions indicated they had hit the communications equipment, effectively decapitating the separatist command structure. "Target neutralized," Olivia confirmed as smoke billowed from the precisely damaged buildings. "Strike package egress route Charlie. Stay low and tight." As they banked away from the target, multiple air defense systems activated, desperately trying to target the departing fighters. "SAM launch! Multiple missiles!" warned Captain Reed. "Maintain egress course," Olivia commanded. "Execute Sierra 3 in sequence. Aircraft 3. Then 5, then 2. She coordinated their defensive maneuvers perfectly, creating a complex pattern that confounded the enemy targeting systems. Missile after missile lost tracking, detonating in empty air as the strike package raced toward the safety of NATO airspace. One missile, however, maintained its lock on Jack's aircraft, despite his evasive maneuvers. "Strike 6, missile still tracking you," Olivia called. "Execute emergency maneuver Tango immediately." Jack followed her instruction, performing a high-G vertical climb followed by a roll that stressed both pilot and aircraft to their limits. The missile couldn't match the extreme maneuver and exploded behind him, close enough that shrapnel peppered his aircraft's tail. "Strike 6, damage report," Olivia demanded. "Some Swiss cheese in my tail, but flight controls responsive," Jack replied, the strain evident in his voice. "I can make it home." 40 minutes later, all 6 aircraft touched down safely at their base. As Olivia climbed down from her cockpit, she was met by Colonel Marshall, his face showing rare emotion. "Preliminary assessment is coming in," he said. "Complete mission success. The separatist advance has halted without leadership. Intelligence confirms all 6 high-value targets were neutralized." He paused. "Most importantly, 0 civilian casualties. Your precision approach worked perfectly." Before she could respond, applause broke out across the tarmac. The ground crews, other pilots, even the stern-faced intelligence officers were clapping. Her strike team approached, and Captain Reed snapped a crisp salute that the others immediately mirrored. "Honor to fly with you, ma'am," he said with genuine respect. The mission's success reverberated far beyond their base. Within hours, news had reached Pentagon leadership. By evening, Olivia was summoned to a secure video conference with the Joint Chiefs of Staff themselves. "Lieutenant Mitchell," began the Air Force Chief of Staff, "your tactical innovation today has potentially changed the course of this conflict. The precision strike you executed has forced the separatists to the negotiating table. They've requested a ceasefire effective immediately." Olivia maintained her professional composure despite the extraordinary news. "Thank you, sir. My team executed flawlessly." "Your team followed your unprecedented battle plan," corrected the general. "A plan that accomplished in one mission what conventional approaches couldn't achieve in weeks." Another general leaned forward. "Lieutenant, we're implementing your missile evasion techniques across all combat wings immediately. Your countermeasures have neutralized what was their most effective weapon against our air assets." The Air Force chief spoke again. "There will be formal recognition for this achievement. In the meantime, consider yourself promoted to captain, effective immediately." As the video conference ended, Olivia sat in stunned silence. When she finally emerged from the communications center, Colonel Marshall was waiting. "Congratulations, Captain Mitchell," he said, having already been informed of her promotion. "Not bad for someone they said would never fly combat." She smiled slightly. "Just doing my job, sir." "No," Marshall corrected. "You're redefining the job. And in doing so, you're rewriting possibilities for countless others who will follow your contrail." That evening, as news of the successful strike and subsequent ceasefire spread throughout the base, Olivia found herself surrounded by pilots who had once viewed her with skepticism or outright hostility. Now they sought her tactical insights, her perspective on combat maneuvering, her innovative approach to seemingly impossible mission parameters. Jack Harrington approached her with a small group of pilots from other squadrons. "Captain Mitchell, would you mind walking us through your canyon approach again? Some of these guys think it was either luck or exaggeration." Olivia spent an hour explaining her tactical thinking, drawing diagrams and answering questions. The pilots listened with rapt attention, professional respect having completely replaced their previous prejudice. Later, alone in her quarters, Olivia video-called her father. His face appeared on the screen, eyes immediately filling with tears at the sight of her captain's bars. "Livy," he whispered, "your mother would be so proud." "I had her with me today, Dad," Olivia replied, touching the place where the wings rested under her uniform. "Every second." Her father wiped his eyes. "The news is calling you a hero. They're saying your mission changed the whole conflict." "I'm no hero," she insisted. "I'm just a pilot who was finally given the chance to do what I was trained for." "Sometimes," her father said softly, "the most heroic act is simply refusing to let others define your limits." 3 weeks later, Olivia stood at attention in the Pentagon's Hall of Heroes. Before her stood the Secretary of Defense, the Air Force Chief of Staff, and an array of high-ranking officials. Behind her stood her strike team, her father, and to her surprise, dozens of female cadets and junior officers who had been specially invited to witness the ceremony. "For extraordinary heroism in connection with military operations against an armed enemy of the United States," intoned the Secretary, "it is my honor to present Captain Olivia Mitchell with the Distinguished Flying Cross." As the medal was pinned to her uniform, just above her mother's wings, Olivia realized this moment wasn't really about her. It was about every woman who had been told no when her abilities screamed yes. It was about every barrier that had seemed impenetrable until someone refused to accept its permanence. After the ceremony, a young female cadet approached her hesitantly. Captain Mitchell, I just wanted to say thank you. When I told my flight instructor I wanted to fly combat missions, he showed me the video of your canyon approach and said, "Then you'd better be as good as Mitchell." It was the first time he'd ever suggested it was possible. Olivia smiled. What's your name, Cadet? Jennifer Torres, ma'am. Well, Cadet Torres, don't be as good as me. Be better. That's how progress works. As Olivia prepared to return to her unit, now as squadron commander following Colonel Marshall's recommendation, she received an unexpected visitor. General Westfield, her former tormentor from the training program, requested a meeting. She found him waiting in a small conference room, looking significantly older than she remembered. Captain Mitchell, he began formally, then sighed and started again. Olivia, I owe you an apology that's long overdue. Sir, that's not necessary. Yes, it is, he interrupted. What you accomplished on that mission, it wasn't just tactical brilliance. It was a repudiation of everything I thought I knew about who belongs in a combat cockpit. He placed a folder on the table between them. I've submitted my retirement papers, but before I go, I'm implementing comprehensive reforms to the training program. No more arbitrary standards designed to exclude certain candidates. From now on, it's performance that matters, nothing else. Olivia studied him carefully. That's a significant change of heart, General. When you're proven this thoroughly wrong, you have two choices. Westfield replied, entrench or evolve. I've chosen the latter, late though it may be. Before she left, Westfield asked one more question. After everything we put you through, the humiliation, the sabotage, how did you not give up? Most would have. Olivia considered this for a moment. When you face that kind of resistance, you discover something crucial about yourself. Either you're defined by other people's limitations, or you're defined by your own courage. I chose courage. Every day, every insult, every barrier. It was another choice to make. Westfield nodded slowly. Your courage has changed more than just a battlefield, Captain. It's changed minds, including mine. 6 months later, Olivia stood before a new class of combat pilot trainees at the very program that had once tried to exclude her. As guest instructor for the Advanced Tactical Module, she surveyed the diverse group before her, nearly a third of them women, a previously unimaginable ratio. Combat isn't about gender, background, or conforming to someone else's idea of what a fighter pilot looks like, she began. It's about split-second decisions, innovative thinking, and the courage to execute when everything is on the line. She activated the tactical display showing the canyon approach from her historic mission. Today, we're going to study unorthodox approaches to seemingly impossible tactical situations. I want each of you to understand something fundamental. The moment you accept that a mission is impossible is the moment you surrender your greatest weapon, your unique perspective. A young female lieutenant raised her hand. Captain Mitchell, weren't you afraid flying that canyon at combat speed? Olivia smiled. Lieutenant, fear isn't your enemy. Letting fear make your decisions is. I was terrified, but I trusted my training, my planning, and my ability to adapt when the unexpected happened. As it always does in combat. After the class, Olivia found Captain Reed waiting for her. That was quite a lesson, he said. Those cadets were hanging on your every word. Let's hope they were listening to the important parts, Olivia replied. Reed smiled. Oh, they were. But the most important lesson wasn't in what you said. He nodded toward the classroom where the trainees were still discussing her tactical innovations. It was in who was saying it. You've changed the picture in their minds of what a combat pilot looks like. That's a victory that will outlast any battle. When barriers fall, they don't just create pathways. They expand possibilities beyond what anyone could have imagined. 2 years after her historic mission, Captain Olivia Mitchell stood in the cockpit of an F-35 Lightning II, the Air Force's most advanced fighter aircraft. The desert stretched endlessly below her as she patrolled the skies over a new conflict zone, this time in North Africa, where insurgent forces had threatened key diplomatic installations. Raptor lead, this is control. We have a situation developing at Outpost Sierra. Diplomatic personnel under fire. Nearest ground support is 20 minutes out. Olivia checked her fuel and weapon status. Control, Raptor Lead. I can be on station in 4 minutes. Request authorization to provide close air support. Authorization granted, Raptor Lead. Be advised, enemy forces are embedded in civilian structures. Extreme precision required. Understood, Control. Raptor 2, form on my wing. We're diverting to Outpost Sierra. Her wingman, Lieutenant Jennifer Torres, the same cadet who had approached her after the medal ceremony 2 years earlier, acknowledged crisply. Torres had graduated top of her class and specifically requested assignment to Olivia's squadron, now known throughout the Air Force as the quote. Olivia could see the situation was dire. Diplomatic personnel had retreated to a fortified safe room, but insurgent forces were attempting to breach the compound perimeter. Conventional airstrikes risked civilian casualties in the densely packed urban terrain. Raptor 2 will use targeted show of force first. Break right on my mark, afterburners at 500 feet. The two F-35s split apart, thundering just above rooftop level on opposite sides of the compound. The sonic intimidation caused many attackers to scatter immediately, but a hardcore element maintained their assault. They're using the eastern marketplace for cover, Torres reported. Civilian presence confirmed. Olivia made a split-second decision. I'm switching to precision munitions. Targeting the empty warehouse on their egress route. Not hitting them directly. Cutting off their retreat. She executed a perfect approach, releasing a single small-diameter bomb that destroyed the abandoned structure behind the insurgents, blocking their escape route without risking civilian casualties. Caught between the advancing security forces from the compound and their now blocked retreat path, the insurgents surrendered. Outpost Sierra secure, came the grateful voice of the diplomatic security chief. Your precision saved lives today, Raptor Lead. Both ours and civilians. Just doing our job, Olivia responded, banking her aircraft back to patrol altitude. Glad we could assist. This mission, like dozens before it over the past 2 years, demonstrated why Olivia Mitchell had become legendary in combat aviation circles. Her innovative tactical approaches prioritized precision over power, minimizing civilian casualties while maximizing effectiveness. What had begun as her personal battle for acceptance had evolved into a fundamental shift in combat doctrine. Back at the airbase, Colonel Marshall, now General Marshall, waited as she completed her post-flight checklist. Another textbook intervention, Captain, he said, pride evident in his voice. Washington noticed. Again. Olivia removed her helmet, fatigue visible on her face after the 6-hour patrol that had culminated in the unexpected close air support mission. Just applied the principles we've been developing, sir. Those principles have transformed our tactical doctrine, Marshall replied, which is why I'm here with news. You've been selected for promotion to major, and you're being reassigned to the Air Force Tactical Development Center. They want you to head up the new Precision Combat Engagement Division. Olivia stopped her shutdown procedure, genuinely surprised. Sir? That's a full colonel's position. Which is why you'll be promoted to lieutenant colonel upon assuming command. It's unprecedented, but so are your accomplishments. Marshall handed her the official orders. They're not just recognizing your combat record, Olivia. They're acknowledging that your approach to warfare, minimizing civilian casualties through precision and innovation rather than overwhelming force, represents the future of air combat. As she processed this information, Lieutenant Torres approached, having completed her own post-flight procedures. Captain Mitchell, Torres said formally, then broke into a wide smile. I just heard from Control. The ambassador personally called to thank us. All hostages safe. 0 civilian casualties. Olivia smiled at her protege. Excellent work today, Lieutenant. Your approach vector was perfect. Torres beamed at the praise. Learn from the best, ma'am. General Marshall observed their interaction with approval. Lieutenant Torres, how would you feel about becoming Raptor Lead? Captain Mitchell, correction, soon-to-be Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell, is being reassigned. Torres's eyes widened. Sir? That would be I'd be honored, sir. Olivia placed a hand on the younger pilot's shoulder. You're ready, Jennifer? You've been ready. Later that evening, alone in her quarters, Olivia video-called her father with the news of her promotion. His face filled with emotion as she explained her new role. Your mother would be beyond proud, he said, voice thick with emotion. Not just of the rank, but of what you've accomplished, changing how the entire Air Force approaches combat operations. Olivia touched her mother's wings, now mounted in a small display case beside her medals. I still wish she could have seen it. Oh, she sees it, her father assured her. Every female pilot who flies combat missions because you broke that barrier. She sees it through their eyes. The transition to the Tactical Development Center brought new challenges. Located near Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, the center was responsible for evolving combat doctrine across the Air Force. As the youngest officer ever to lead a division, Olivia faced initial skepticism from some of the older, more traditional officers. Colonel James Weber, the center's deputy commander and a 30-year veteran, made his doubts clear during her first staff meeting. With all due respect to your combat record, Colonel Mitchell, he said, emphasizing her newly minted rank with slight derision, developing tactics in the safety of a secure facility is quite different from improvising in the field. We deal with systematic approaches based on decades of air warfare experience. Rather than becoming defensive, Olivia nodded. You're absolutely right, Colonel Weber. Field improvisation and systematic doctrine development are different skills. That's why I'm looking forward to learning from your experience, just as I hope my field innovations might inform our collective work. Her diplomatic response caught Weber off guard. He had clearly expected confrontation. Instead, Olivia had offered respect and collaboration. It was a leadership approach she had been refining, acknowledging others' expertise while confidently maintaining her own value. Over the following months, Olivia revolutionized the Tactical Development Center's approach. Rather than working in theoretical isolation, she established direct channels with active combat units, creating a continuous feedback loop that allowed real-world experience to inform tactical development and vice versa. Her division pioneered the, quote, minimal effective force doctrine, which emphasized achieving military objectives with the smallest possible impact on civilian infrastructure and populations. This approach not only saved lives but also significantly reduced post-conflict reconstruction costs and accelerated political stabilization in former combat zones. 6 months into her tenure, Colonel Weber sought her out after a particularly successful demonstration of her new tactical protocols. I owe you an apology, Colonel Mitchell, he said forthrightly. I assumed your rapid advancement was politically motivated, a way for the Air Force to showcase diversity. I was wrong. Your innovations are saving lives and making our forces more effective simultaneously. That's not politics, that's excellence. Olivia appreciated his candor. Thank you, Colonel. In my experience, excellence is the most effective response to skepticism. Weber nodded thoughtfully. A lesson many of us could benefit from. As word of the Tactical Development Center's successes spread, Olivia began receiving speaking requests from military academies and war colleges. Initially reluctant to step into the spotlight, she came to recognize these opportunities as essential for institutional change. At the Air Force Academy, she addressed a packed auditorium of cadets. Looking out over the audience, she noted with satisfaction the significant increase in female faces compared to her own cadet days. The future of warfare isn't about dominating through overwhelming force, she told them. It's about achieving precise effects that accomplish military objectives while minimizing collateral impact. This requires not just technological advancement, but diversity of thought. Different perspectives generate different solutions to the same problem. A female cadet raised her hand. Colonel Mitchell, how did you handle the resistance when you were breaking into combat aviation? The history books tell us what you accomplished, but not how you overcame the personal challenges. Olivia considered the question carefully. I could tell you I just worked harder, stayed focused on my goals, and let my performance speak for itself. That's all true, but it's not the complete story. She paced thoughtfully before continuing. The hardest part wasn't the external barriers, the rigged tests, the sabotaged equipment, the constant skepticism. The hardest part was fighting the internal voice that started to question whether they might be right about me. The auditorium was silent, every cadet leaning forward slightly. That's what systematic exclusion does. It makes you doubt your own capabilities. The most important battle I fought wasn't in the skies over Eastern Europe. It was in my own mind, rejecting the limitations others tried to impose on me. She looked directly at the female cadet who had asked the question. So yes, excel in your performance, that's essential. But also guard your self-belief fiercely. When voices, external or internal, tell you something is impossible, recognize that as a sign you're pushing boundaries that need to be pushed. Her words resonated far beyond that auditorium. Video of her speech circulated throughout military channels and beyond, inspiring a new generation of barrier breakers in fields ranging from medicine to engineering to politics. One unexpected outcome of her growing influence was an invitation to the White House, where the president was hosting a forum on military innovation. Olivia found herself seated at a table with Joint Chiefs, defense industry leaders, and key congressional figures. Colonel Mitchell, the president addressed her directly. Your minimal effective force doctrine has transformed how we approach modern conflicts. The reduction in civilian casualties has significantly improved our diplomatic position in multiple regions. What prompted this approach? All eyes turned to her. Olivia recognized the moment's significance, not just for her career, but for everyone who had faced similar barriers. Mr. President, I developed this approach because I had to find a different way forward. Traditional combat tactics were designed by and for a homogeneous group of military thinkers. When I encountered resistance to my presence in combat aviation, I realized that same resistance might be limiting our tactical thinking. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Being forced to prove myself repeatedly meant I couldn't rely on conventional approaches. I had to find solutions that were undeniably superior. That necessity drove innovation. Diversity isn't just a social goal, it's a strategic advantage that drives creative problem-solving. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs nodded slowly. Colonel Mitchell has demonstrated that including different perspectives doesn't just change who's in the room, it changes what solutions emerge from that room. Her combat record and her tactical innovations speak for themselves. 3 years after assuming command at the Tactical Development Center, now full Colonel Olivia Mitchell faced another pivotal moment in her career. The Air Force Chief of Staff personally visited the center to observe her division's latest breakthrough, an integrated air defense penetration system that allowed strike packages to neutralize key targets without destroying civilian infrastructure. After the demonstration, he invited her to a private meeting. Colonel, the President is creating a special task force to reshape our approach to limited conflicts worldwide. This will be a joint effort across all service branches, with significant diplomatic and humanitarian components. Quote, he studied her carefully. I'm recommending you to lead the military side of this initiative. Olivia was momentarily speechless. Sir, that's typically a general officer's position. Yes, it is, he replied meaningfully. The promotion board meets next month. Your name is at the top of the list. The significance wasn't lost on her. If approved, she would become the youngest female general officer in Air Force history, and the first who had risen through the combat pilot ranks. This isn't just about recognizing your contributions, Colonel, the chief continued. It's about positioning your expertise where it can have the greatest impact. Your approach to warfare represents the direction our entire military needs to move. Precise, efficient, and minimizing civilian impact while achieving clear objectives. As she prepared for this next challenge, Olivia received an unexpected visitor at her office. An older woman in civilian clothes was escorted in by her aide. Colonel Mitchell, I'm Dr. Eleanor James. I was the flight surgeon for the 54th Fighter Squadron during Desert Storm. Olivia immediately recognized the name. You served with my mother. Dr. James smiled warmly. Catherine was my closest friend in the squadron. I was there when she flew her last mission. Olivia gestured for her to sit. Please, tell me more. Dad doesn't talk much about those days. It's still painful for him. Your mother was extraordinary, Dr. James began. She faced even greater barriers than you did. Women weren't allowed in combat roles then, but she flew reconnaissance missions that constantly skirted the combat exclusion rules. She reached into her bag and pulled out a weathered journal. Catherine kept this diary during her deployment. She asked me to hold it for safekeeping, with instructions to give it to you when the time was right. When I saw the news about your potential promotion to general, I knew that time had come. With trembling hands, Olivia accepted the journal. I never knew this existed. Your mother believed that someday women would fly combat missions openly. She wrote about that hope extensively. Dr. James stood to leave. I think she'd be amazed to see that her daughter was the one who made it happen. That night, Olivia stayed up reading her mother's journal, tears streaming down her face as she connected with the woman who had inspired her journey, but hadn't lived to see its fulfillment. The final entry, written just days before the accident that took her life, struck Olivia particularly hard. I fly these missions knowing I'm breaking rules designed to protect women from combat. But who will protect the next generation of female pilots from the barriers we allow to stand? Sometimes I imagine a future where my little Olivia might fly not just reconnaissance but true combat missions, her talent and courage fully recognized. That future seems impossible now, but impossible just means no one has done it yet. The promotion ceremony took place on a bright spring day at Andrews Air Force Base. The audience included not just military personnel, but many of the individuals who had been part of Olivia's journey. Jennifer Torres, now a captain commanding her own squadron. Jack Harrington, who had become one of her strongest advocates. Her father, beaming with pride. And even General Westfield, long retired, but present to witness the culmination of a journey he had once tried to prevent. As the Chief of Staff pinned the single star of a brigadier general to her uniform, Olivia thought about all the barriers that had stood in her way, and all the barriers that had fallen because she refused to accept them as permanent. The chief stepped back and saluted her. "Congratulations, General Mitchell." Olivia returned the salute crisply. "Thank you, sir." Addressing the assembled crowd, the chief spoke about Olivia's contributions to modern warfare doctrine and her exemplary leadership. Then he turned to her. "General Mitchell, would you like to say a few words?" Stepping to the podium, Olivia surveyed the audience. The past, present, and future of military aviation all represented before her. "When I began this journey, I was fighting for the chance to prove myself in a combat aircraft. That personal goal eventually transformed into something much larger, a vision of warfare that achieves objectives with precision rather than overwhelming force, that respects civilian life even while engaging enemy combatants." She touched the star on her shoulder. "This promotion isn't just a personal milestone. It's a recognition that diversity of thought leads to innovation, and that questioning conventional wisdom often reveals better paths forward." Her eyes found Captain Torres in the crowd. "To every person who's been told that certain roles aren't for people like you, whether because of gender, background, or any other arbitrary distinction, remember that barriers only stand until someone refuses to accept them. That someone can be you." After the ceremony, as the crowd mingled at the reception, Olivia found herself face-to-face with General Westfield. "General Mitchell," he said, genuine respect in his voice. "A well-deserved promotion." "Thank you, sir," she replied, surprisingly comfortable in this encounter with her former adversary. Westfield hesitated, then spoke quietly. "I've often wondered, do you regret the obstacles we placed in your path? The unfairness of it all?" Olivia considered this thoughtfully. "Regret isn't the right word. I wouldn't have chosen that path of resistance. But I recognize that overcoming those obstacles shaped my approach to leadership and combat strategy. Without those challenges, I might have simply replicated existing doctrine rather than creating something new." Westfield nodded slowly. "A generous perspective. Still, I owe you an apology for my role in those barriers." "The best apology is the change you implemented before retiring," Olivia replied. "The training program you reformed has produced dozens of exceptional female combat pilots who never had to face the barriers I did. That's a meaningful legacy." Later, Olivia found her father standing alone, gazing at a display of historic aircraft photos that included her mother's reconnaissance jet. "Dad," she said softly, linking her arm through his. "Are you okay?" He smiled through tears. "More than okay. Proud beyond words." He looked at the photo of her mother. "She always said you would fly higher than anyone imagined." "I had good examples to follow," Olivia replied, leaning her head against his shoulder. "No, Livy," he corrected gently. "You had inspiration, but you charted your own course. That's what makes your achievement so remarkable." As the reception wound down, Olivia slipped away for a moment of solitude on the base's observation deck, overlooking the runway. The setting sun glinted off an F-16 taxiing for an evening patrol, the same aircraft type that had been the focus of her long struggle and ultimate triumph. Captain Torres joined her, following her gaze to the fighter jet. "Hard to believe it all started with that aircraft," Torres remarked. "What you went through to fly it. And now you're reshaping how the entire military approaches conflict." Olivia smiled. "What about you, Captain? Where do you see your journey heading?" Torres stood a little straighter. "I'm applying for the Tactical Development Center next year. I have some ideas about improving our close air support protocols to further reduce risk to ground forces." "Good," Olivia nodded approvingly. "The barriers I faced were obvious. Institutional sexism, outdated policies. But there are always more subtle barriers to innovation and progress. They need people like you to challenge them." As they watched the F-16 roar down the runway and lift into the evening sky, Olivia reflected on the full circle of her journey. From a young woman fighting for the chance to fly combat missions to a general officer reshaping how those missions were conducted. "The most powerful legacy isn't what you accomplish yourself," she told Torres quietly. "It's what you make possible for others to accomplish after you." The next morning, General Olivia Mitchell reported for her first day leading the Joint Special Operations Task Force on Precision Conflict Resolution. As she entered the Pentagon briefing room, officers from all service branches stood at attention. Army, Navy, Marines, and Air Force united under her command. "At ease," she said, taking her place at the head of the table. "We have important work to do." Looking around at the diverse group of military thinkers assembled to reshape the future of warfare, Olivia Mitchell recognized the true victory of her long struggle. It wasn't the general's star on her shoulder, or even her combat achievements. It was this moment where her hard-won perspective would help shape a military doctrine focused not just on winning conflicts, but on minimizing their human cost. She opened the briefing with the philosophy that had guided her from the beginning. The measure of military excellence isn't just in the battles we win, but in how we win them. Let's begin. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.